flying prices to the moon. The beers them waiting for the crash coming real soon. But the OG consultant watching, he's seen it all before. Over 40 years in the game, he knows the real score. Bull versus bear, a real estate fight. Peter Zalewski tell you who's wrong and who is right. In the Miami can do investing club with no guess. He cuts through the noise and all of the mess. The Peter Zalewski Show. Big respect, OG in the game. Listen and learn the man's name. And up down. Peter Zalewski Show.
Happy Wednesday, Miami. This is the Peter Zalewski Show. Every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, we live stream. I'm Peter Zalewski. I'm a condo consultant, expert witness, and founder of Miami Condo Investing Club. Every Wednesday, I have a conversation with somebody I think you need to know. It doesn't matter if you've lived here or been born and raised. It doesn't matter if you just got here or you're thinking about coming. I'm going to introduce you to somebody you need to have on your radar just in case you might need the services that that person offers. We're going to have an interesting conversation. You're going to get to know somebody else in this broad, diverse South Florida marketplace, and you will definitely enjoy yourself for the next hour. Let me go ahead and bring on my guest this week. This gentleman, he's a little bit of a mover and a shaker. He's a co-chair over at Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce. He's on the Construction, Real Estate, and Development Council. He also had the courage to invite me in to speak in a bull versus bear conversation against the biggest bull they had in Miami Beach. And you know what they did? They put it to a vote, and guess who lost? Imagine that. I lost. That being said, let's go ahead and introduce Kevin Krueger. Kevin is a commercial real estate advisor. He does tenant rep. He does office. He does warehouse. He does retail. And increasingly, he's working with developers in order to identify dirt, land, so they can go ahead and build something big. Originally from Boston, Miami Beach, and Miami is his hometown. Kevin Krueger, thanks for making time. Thanks for sucking down that NyQuil. I know you're not feeling very well, but you soldiered on.
Pete, you are the medicine, brother. This energy, how could anybody feel sour? But yeah, I got a 24-hour bug. I'm so happy to be with you and the Condo Vultures and your session here. So thank you for having me. If I can add a clarification too, when Pete humbly says that he lost, that's just because we had interviewed people the day after and had a fun little put the entry in. But you know, of the 50 people in our council meeting, you came with the stats, you came with the energy, and you weren't overselling anything, which is something I appreciate about you. And our colleague, the bull, Brad Colmer, he really is a really solid character. And look, we were comparing apples and oranges at that real estate debate. He's building a Class A+ office that's got water views, and you're studying, researching the macro residential condo market. Apples and oranges, and you both knocked out of the park. So thank you for bringing your time and your talents to us.
See, and Kevin, that's why everybody loves you. You're so diplomatic. You don't want to say that I went walking into a Chamber of Commerce event and people didn't necessarily like the bad news or what I was selling. So I completely understand that. I think the audience recognizes that. So, but kudos to you for sort of putting in a diplomatic way. I now feel better about myself.
Attaboy. Well, I try to keep it real while leading this council. It's a mix of construction, real estate, and development. And, you know, we live in a holistic, real world. And sometimes as salespeople, we get into the yes factor a little too much, but we've got to pay attention to the bearish realities sometimes. So, and you were a great asset to the community.
You know, Kevin, talking about the reality, I mean, you are a smart gentleman. You went to Boston College. You got a master's at Babson. South Florida's fortunate enough to have you down here on the ground, sharing and spreading all of the wisdom as well as the energy that you have. So I want to introduce you to the community. I want the community to understand a little bit about you. Then what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about your business, kind of what you see going on. And then I want to kind of delve down into what's going on in Miami Beach as well as South Beach. Now, some people might be asking, why are we talking about South Beach this particular week? Peter, you're always talking about Greater Downtown Miami. You're always talking about other areas. The reason I'm doing is I'm doing a tour this Saturday from 10 to 1 o'clock. We're going to be wandering around South Beach. I'm going to lay out a list of all the condo projects. I'm also going to tell people stories. I'm going to teach them how to analyze condo projects. But, you can't necessarily convey a message unless you're speaking to the sources, the ones who actually know what's going down on the ground. I might know condos, Kevin. I don't know anything, though, about what's going on the commercial side. So when this, this week came up and this episode was up, I said, let me reach out to a guy who's really in tune. And, Kevin, that was you. Kevin, tell us a little bit about Boston. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then bring us to the point you got down to South Florida and what it's been like. Because you are now a local. You've passed my 3-year period in terms of being real and having credibility. And what's that 3-year period based on? The first year you come down here, you party like a rock star. The second year, you start to get serious. And by the third year, if you haven't gotten serious, you're going home to rehab or you're probably going to jail. You've been here more than 3 years, so you are legit, Kevin. Tell us how you got to Miami.
That is funny. That is a funny perspective, and you're not wrong. I'll tell you that my older siblings actually lived in Fort Lauderdale years ago. And my brother Mike had encouraged our younger cousin, Keith Darby, who is rather fresh out of college and felt a little stuck in Cincinnati, Ohio, working. I think he was an IT guy, like DHL. And my brother was like, hey, try Miami. I think you'd enjoy it. He came down. And then a few years later, he got into commercial real estate, maybe age 25, that's when you want to get into this business is young with energy. And, but I had burnt of Boston and my business. We know this last week, if we're watching live, that there's been a massive snowstorm nationwide. And that's not why I burnt out of Boston, but the last winter that I had there was the original Snowmageddon. I think it was like 170 inches of snow up there. And now, yeah, the sand is softer on the other side if the grass isn't greener. But I had run a sportswear brand, a graphic t-shirt brand for Bostonians at that decade. We were just winning all sorts of championships. And it's the type of scene.
Oh, look at that.
Well,
look at that. You're getting to dig in.
It is what it is, I'm looking up. I'm trying to share our LinkedIn here to see if it goes to some others, but forgive me. So I had a really creative, fun business that I had hoped would take off into the multi-millions, like some of my peers did actually. But that is not an easy business. Fashion fades, and you know how difficult it is to sell short sleeve t-shirts after a Bruins hockey loss where my dedicated street teamers would shovel the slush and the snow off of Causeway Street. And, I learned so much grit from running that business that adds to the patience. And I like to say empathy of serving my business clients. So our clients tend to be C-level, CEOs, CFOs, etc. And they have to look after their businesses, their staff, their family, and we have to move them about, whether it's within, Brickell or across town to Doral or what have you, or maybe they're migrating from another country or city. So fast forwarding, over the last decade or so, following my cousin Keith's footsteps to be a tenant rep, which I think most of the consumer market wouldn't necessarily know. What is a tenant rep? You drive by these signs that say, retail space available at the mall. We've all seen that. Most of us are not in that level of business that we're doing that. But why would you go, if you're a sports agent, if you're an athlete, why would you go to the team and negotiate your own contracts? You would bring on Scott Boras or a sports agent, and that guy only makes money if you're making money. So the landlords are happy to pay, just like the general manager, team owner is happy to pay both the athlete and, in this case, the tenant rep broker. We kind of speak the same language, whether it's, the numbers or the build outs, etc. So in a nutshell, that's kind of been my last 20 years with really summing up a lot of each, because they are really dynamic, challenging businesses.
All right. Now, probably the most difficult question of the podcast, Kevin. The New England Patriots, the hated New England Patriots
We're back,
down here in
baby.
Miami.
We're back.
The Miami Dolphins, where the Miami Dolphins football team is sucking wind. They just blew out the head coach. They're probably getting a new quarterback. Where's your allegiance? You got 10 years on the ground in South Florida.
Look,
which way is it going? And don't be a New York Jets fan and say you like both teams, because that doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it's tacky to say the least. That's being polite. No, I try to get to a Dolphins game every year when the Patriots come to town, and it's
I knew that was coming.
I went. I think they must have done opening day or the second week here, and it was really nice. One of the younger gents in my circle had just got his season tickets. He's like 28 years old, and he's got a set of 3 somehow instead of like 4. Maybe he's got the odd seats or whatever. But Luke, he says, "Hey man, I hate the Patriots, but I love you. I want to take my dad, and I want to take you." And so we went and we blew out the Dolphins this year. That was pretty fun. But look, the Dolphins are such a great rival, as we all know. They're the one team that kept knocking the Patriots down. I think most of our AFC East rivals couldn't muster double digits against my hero, Tom Brady, over a 20-year period. But these Dolphins just kept upsetting us. And sometimes they'd knock us out of, well, home field advantage. We'd still be in the playoffs, but we just wouldn't have home field advantage. But it's a great rivalry here. I thoroughly enjoy watching the energy around the Miami sports market. This is a fair weather city, truly. But sometimes when the fans get up, like we hosted the National Football College Football Championship last week, a lot of good energy. Also a rival. Boston College's top 2 rivals are Notre Dame and University of Miami. We've played them for about 50 years. And I golf clap for the Hurricanes when my friend takes me to the game. I also golf clap for the opponent as they knock them down a little bit.
Now, any South Floridians who are watching this, you know what you want me to say. You want me to talk about how the Florida Panthers have put 2 Stanley Cups on the board at the cost of very good Boston Bruins team. So, you know, that being said, Kevin, let's sort of talk about, you know, the various markets and how things change. And really, I like the comparison between sports and between the real estate world. You know, you're interested in sports. It goes back to baseball, does it not? And can you tell people a little bit about that? You're a little bit of a baseball player.
Yeah, I've gotten back into it last summer for the first time in 7 years, figuring use it before I lose it. But I grew up playing baseball in Maryland as a 5-year-old, all the way till I'd say about 25. There wasn't a summer I missed playing baseball until my first career is financial services. Our job at Fidelity Investments took us to Rhode Island. I bought a 3-family home, also entered graduate school, and I figured, okay, I've done all I can in amateur ball. Let me focus on grad school and the rest of life and career, whatnot. But I quickly got back into it through coaching high school baseball. One of my old teammates was the head coach at a small suburban school outside of Boston, far from my Babson campus, and I did it for about 5 years, and I loved it. It was so interesting. You learn to be like part psychologist, and I think I've got that sensitivity to childhood. So as a 13-year-old, I had to move out of Maryland to Alabama and then to Massachusetts, and that's a real challenge that most students don't have to do. My dad was Army. So with these 14, I coached the freshman team, and, you know, I was the pitching coach for varsity, but that was a passion that it's hard to let go. The first thing you ever fall in love with, like baseball. And yeah, I think sports and business are definitely aligned. We're competing, and we're learning resilience and perseverance and teamwork all the time. So if you notice my job title here, my Instagram handle there, commercial real estate coach, you know, I just played along with that because when I had moved to Miami, cousin Keith was like, hey, most of these agents, we're all tenant, we open up LLCs. And so overnight, I thought, back in Boston, when I ran my street team selling T-shirts outside of Boston Garden and Fenway Park, I was head coach Kev. All my fans online, my newsletters, signed off as head coach Kev and the superfan street team or what have you. So I kept going with it because as an advisor, think about a sports agent or a lawyer, you're guiding these people through, and it's not always the nuts and bolts of the case at hand. Sometimes you're consoling, you're cheerleading. And so I've kind of enjoyed that role for my clients. And what I like about this industry versus my previous ownership of this merchandise brand, inventory is incredibly expensive, rent's expensive, wages are expensive. I get to live vicariously through my clients' awesome businesses and brands and stuff. So, yeah.
No, Kevin, why got you into the commercial side? A lot of people, when they get into real estate down here, because let's be serious. Real estate's really what drives this economy. It's always driven this economy. We're celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the great South Florida land boom of the 1920s. It's always been about real estate down here. But so when you went into real estate, it was a natural. But why did you go the commercial route rather than maybe going the residential route like a lot of other people tend to do? What was it? Was it could you provide some insight into that?
Yeah, sure. It's certainly, I think it was following my mentor's lead into commercial real estate. He'd been at it for a dozen years, had a lot of experience, a lot of energy. But again, back to wanting to be a part of something impactful with my clients' businesses versus, with all respect to residential, I don't care if the husband wants a koi pond like I would and the wife wants a white picket fence. I don't want to be a part of that coaching. I don't have to listen to the nuances of family home life and this and that, or rentals, or so I really enjoy serving like our targets for clientele as tenant reps tend to be office, warehouse, then retail. And the office and the warehouse theoretically are a little easier than retail, which is a pain in the ass, but kind of the most fun because I get to participate in defining the culture of a neighborhood through retail versus manufacturing or distribution warehouse. But to me, serving the business community is so much more interesting than competing in the residential market, which another reason, and this is something listeners might be interested as well too, when people think of real estate agents, they think of residential. They forget about the commercial because everyone needs a roof over their head, whether they're renting an apartment, a dormitory, or buying their home or what have you. And there's less participating in commercial real estate. If there's 100,000 agents in Miami-Dade, 90% of them, 95% are doing residential, where we might have 5 to 10,000 at most serving commercial. And even with that, you've got a blend across, some are resi-mercial, as we call them. So I think in that sense, our network is smaller and we get to know each other a little bit better. So when you do break into commercial real estate, you'll have the phones answered pretty quickly, and having a mentor like Keith and our brokerage firm had a little name for itself enough locally. And I think those are some of the reasons that commercial is more exciting. Also, I would add, financially, you might be compensated significantly more for closing the 5-year warehouse lease versus the 1-year apartment lease, correct? So Florida, I think most states have laws where you can max 12 months on a residential lease, and it doesn't make sense for a business to move its whole operations, all its staff, and we get residuals. Usually year 6, you're then paid for participating in the original lease and the extension. So those become attractive to serve commercial real estate as well.
Fascinating. Now, Kevin, you're involved with the Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce. Like I mentioned, you're the co-chair of the, let me get it right, Construction, Real Estate, and Development Council. What prompted you to go ahead and get involved with that organization? And more importantly, why the hell do you guys meet at 8 a.m.? Everybody I know who lives in Miami Beach and spends time in Miami Beach, they're out partying until 4 in the morning. I don't know how they I don't even think they go home. They must go right to these chamber events.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, it's almost a city that never sleeps, right? But the 8 a.m.
Never.
So I think we do 9, Peter. I have to get you up and out of your home by 8 a.m. He's so scarred. Yeah, no, I think again, like living in Miami Beach, a couple years in, I saw the energy here and how much of a gem that this paradise city, this little barrier island is. When people, all right, let's back up to my life in Boston. I really had never been to Miami. When I started my industry, started this career, I didn't know a street nor a soul. I just knew, my mentor, and then I started getting to know people through the running community. For one, running's a great way to get to know any new town. I was new to running, new to Miami. I was more of a solo workout guy, so I would never think to run with a group, but you want to get to know people. And Miami in general was so welcoming and so highly educated, more than I perceived from across the country. Most of America looks at Miami as a party town, as you say, and filtering through that and realizing there's a lot of talent here, a lot of professional talent. And, I feel like Miami Beach has the best of all those worlds. They got the millionaires next door. I say that because you wouldn't recognize the guy that's got, a family office because he's skateboarding down the street in his swim trunks, which is laughable back home. I got the sport coat on here, and it's so funny, Peter. When I got my headshots done, this is years ago, for my website or what have you. I had the navy blue blazer and tie in one, and I had the tan linen blazer and lavender shirt with open collar. And I had 60 friends respond to me online. Which headshot should I buy for my professional card? Exactly 30 Bostonians. What color do you think they picked? And 30.
They probably went with the more.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the 30 Bostonians picked that IBM blue, and 30 it was down the line. So it's night and day. As I said, the sand is softer on this side. So why do we get involved in the Chamber of Commerce here? I would say a number of reasons. One, curiosity. Two, the networking, anticipating like the face-to-face. When you work as an independent real estate agent, you're doing a lot of alone work unless you're out on the road with your clients and touring the properties and so on. You're often working, it's a dog-eat-dog world, right? So you eat what you kill. You might have colleagues in your office, if you have an office. A lot of real estate firms are small. So they're 2 to 5 total, or maybe you're part of a big operation, but you're doing your alone work and you don't always have other creative professionals to connect with. So I think that quickly became a good factor. And I call the Chamber of Commerce a framily. Friends, the old Facebook line of friends and family in your inner circle. And I found them very inspiring as well, and idea generators. I'm an idea guy, and if I hear or see something, for instance, if I could shift into gears about the Chamber of Commerce too, like you and I were talking before we started about how I created this, I call it a slow up, but a sports network called the Miami Athletic Association, where I was doing monthly social 5Ks, meaning inclusive. They were walk and roll fun runs and I would use them as like almost like a ribbon ceremony, like a flash mob. We would go welcome a new retail or restaurant to town. The chamber was out doing
Nice.
its red ribbon ceremony stuff, and I had this vision that combined my passions for sports and fitness with the retail side. I said the more fun side of commercial would be the retail. So that was really cool. And I did that under the Miami Athletic Association monthly. I backed off it a couple years ago, but I might like to shift that association to a young professionals network that would then encourage 18 to 30 somethings that are either interested or in tourism, hospitality, sports, and marketing. Put them all in the same room, and we'll do like networking out is what I call it. So I'll tell you about that next interview if we get it going down the road. But Chamber of Commerce, to sum it up too, I stepped into the role as the chairman of the Real Estate Council, for short. It's a mouthful. A little
Yes, it is.
ago, and you were my first guest along with Brad Colmer. And it was perfect. And what I've tried to do is a really dynamic, like I said, holistic view that's not just yesing everybody. I'm not doing advertorials. I'm really getting boots on the ground and challenging ourselves to the realities, the good, the bad, and the ugly of our industry.
Now, Kevin, I think it's clear to anybody who's watching this, you're a very uplifting person. You tend to bring people together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you on the spot here. You do office, you do warehouse, you do retail. Can you tell us, compare and contrast what the conditions are for all three? And let's go one by one of each of those sectors or forms of real estate. What's going on in Miami Beach and South Beach? And then let's maybe compare that to what's going on the mainland. Anybody doesn't know, so you got the Atlantic Ocean as we move from east to west, then you're going to run into the Barrier Island, then you will run into the Bay, Biscayne Bay, and ultimately you end up on the mainland. For the longest time, South Beach was the place to go. And then in and around the great South Florida condo boom and bust of 2002 to 2011, stuff started going over the causeway into the mainland, and now pretty much Miami, greater downtown Miami is dominating the market. Although near the end of this, I'm going to tell you why I think that's about ready to change. But so Kevin, Miami Beach is a very distinctly different market versus greater downtown Miami. And all three of those components that you work with, whether it be warehouse, maybe there's not enough warehouse in Miami Beach and around, but the retail and the office space, dramatically different markets, I would say. So can you kind of give people a big picture about what's going on the mainland, greater downtown Miami, which is where your office is, versus Miami Beach, where you're actively involved and you live?
Right. No, great questions, Peter. As I mentioned, like when Americans or when the world think of Miami, what do they actually think of? They think of Miami Beach.
South Beach?
Yeah, they think of
South
Ocean
Beach.
Drive, and that's what gets broadcast on TV. That's where like TV and movies, they don't know.
LeBron James, I'm taking my skills to South Beach.
Yeah.
He was nowhere near South Beach.
Yeah.
He was working in downtown Miami, and he lived in Coconut Grove. He didn't even get close to South Beach.
Right. Well, a little fun from sports history. I'm trying to remember. He was quoting somebody. You know that? He
Oh, okay. I didn't realize
didn't
that.
mean it to come out as poorly as it did. He was trying to be tongue in cheek.
Oh, I loved it.
Well,
I absolutely loved it.
The Clevelanders, they burned his sneakers and jerseys in the street that night. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think what's amazing about Miami Beach is its leadership lately has been resident focused as much as possible. We have a new economic development director named Stephen Anthony. We've had a few folks in that role. Stephen Anthony comes from Kansas City, as well as I think he had some time in DC. And they have some policies or some attractions in place, like a new business concierge to help offices or retail set up through their permits quicker, get their BTRs, etc. So you're able to just call the city economic development department and get an in-house concierge to walk you through the process. I think Miami-Dade is notorious, even nationwide. People know that our building permit issues are so difficult. Whereas, like, let's say the industrial market of Medley is is known to be more accommodating. So, but Miami Beach, as you mentioned, doesn't really have warehouses, and anything that did might have turned into like a gallery over in Sunset Harbor. The colleague that
Exactly.
yeah, the colleague that you had debated with last year was an Oranges debate with Brad Colmer. He built the second Class A, I'll call it A plus, office building in Miami Beach in over 2 decades. So 25 years ago was probably the last Class A office, and some of those are built up, and some of those are going through some renovation, like 555 Washington Avenue has had some nice renovations of late, the common areas and whatnot, in order to compete. But Brad Colmer's 18 Sunset is the first and only with waterfront views of Sunset Harbor, the little Biscayne Bay. And that would be attractive to the, these luxurious brands or family office. So the Miami Beach office market generally is not going to be the Brickell market, the Manhattan market, or any other national office market that we would know as 20,000 foot floor plates. You're not going to attract over 100 or 200 staff to commute or live in Miami